Haunted Edinburgh Vaults. This is a creepy photo that was uploaded to Reddit at the start of 2023. Without context, the photo seems to show a person obscured by light in the foreground, with two figures looking towards them in the background. It becomes much more unsettling when you hear that the user took this picture in Edinburgh Vaults, an underground city within a city, which encompasses much of Edinburgh's Old Town. Very little light is available down in the vaults, and they are said to be haunted. Consider how much more terrifying this is then, when you hear that the uploader did not see the people in the photograph when it was taken. Even stranger is that the tour guide, the person in the foreground, had commented that she sensed something to her right. The uploader claims that there was nobody standing in that corner of the room when the photograph was taken, but in the image you can plainly see two figures standing there, looming in the darkness. They appear to be two women, one dressed in red, and slightly taller than the other, who is dressed in green. They appear to be dressed in clothing from times gone by, which would make sense given how old the vaults are. So, how can this photo be explained? Is this real-life ghost footage caught on camera, or is this a simple trick of the light? What do you think? We have been to the Edinburgh Vaults personally, and can say that they are pretty creepy. The Curse of Lake Lanier. This is a strange tale from the countryside of northern Georgia in USA. 40 miles northeast of Atlanta sits Lake Lanier, 59 square miles of water that was created by a man as a result of the construction of the Buford Dam in 1956. It's a popular tourist and recreational site, with thousands relaxing on the lake's shores every year. But a dark piece of history runs underneath. Since the lake was created, it is estimated that almost 700 people have lost their lives on or in its waters. This is not one isolated disaster. The most people have died there in a single year is just over 20, but it has claimed a disproportionate amount of lives in comparison to many other lakes. Causes of death range from boating collisions, drownings, and even animal attacks. This has led many locals and supernatural believers to consider that the lake is cursed. Some of this superstition dates back to the early 1950s, when the town of Oscarville occupied some of the land that the lake currently sits on. Oscarville was a small town populated mainly by black residents who faced injustice and racism at the hands of the white population of Georgia. Across the 1900s, lynchings took place in the town. It is because of these horrific lynchings that Lake Lanier and its unusually high death rate have been labelled as cursed by some. As for ghostly legends, in 1958, a car carrying two women crashed off a bridge and plunged into the lake. Many years later, locals reported seeing the ghosts of these women, and one of them became known as the Lady of the Lake. Locals believe that she would try and lure victims into the water. If any of you live near here, we'd love to know if you have any personal stories with the lake, and if you'd be willing to take a trip down there in the night to see if you can witness or capture anything strange. The 1962 Halloween Massacre urban legend. In a small idyllic American town free from crime, an unimaginable horror unfolded on Halloween night 1962. A group of high school students seeking an alcohol-fueled celebration gathered at Marla's house. With her father out of town and a stash of beer readily available, it seemed like the perfect location. As the night progressed, they enjoyed the company of trick-or-treaters, played pranks and indulged in drinks. However, a shocking discovery was made when they reviewed a Polaroid photo taken by one of the students. Amongst the friendly faces, a man wearing an executioner's mask lurked in their midst. From that moment, chaos descended upon the party. Strange occurrences plagued the terrified group, who soon realized they were trapped inside a house with barred windows. The horror intensified when Marla and the photographer were found covered in blood, brutally attacked by the masked man. Panic gripped everyone as they desperately searched for escape, unaware of who could be trusted. Locked inside the house with no way out, the friends were defenseless against the relentless killer. The town was forever scarred by the ruthless massacre, which left no survivors. This urban legend states that the unidentified murderer remains at large, leaving behind only photographs and a chilling mask on a hillside outside of town. Although the authenticity of this tale remains unproven due to limited evidence, the question lingers: what do you believe? Ghost caught on camera. In 2019, a ghost hunter from Cornwall, UK, made the bold claim that he had recorded the most definitive proof yet of life after death. Mark Davis was visiting Falmouth Cemetery on Cornwall's south coast. The historic cemetery is the final resting place of almost 180 service personnel who died during the World Wars, including several who are unidentified. Using specialist equipment, Mark claims he recorded multiple instances of paranormal activity, including 2 figures appearing from the grave of 2 women. He has edited the footage to show the exact moment he believes a spirit reveals itself. Take a look.
Greet us with the wind like you do.
There is definitely some movement in the clip, but whether that is faces you can see, as Mark claims, that may be a push. However, he is convinced. What do you think? Is this proof of life after death, or is there some other explanation? The most haunted road in Missouri, the Zombie Road. In a midwestern suburb of Missouri is a 2-mile stretch of track that has the reputation as being one of the world's most haunted trails, known as Merrimack Greenway. The route meanders through the woods of St. Louis County, and the series of trails cross the site of one of the largest Native American burial mounds in the country. It was originally built in the late 1860s to provide access to the Merrimack and the railroad tracks located along the river. In the 1950s, reports of numerous encounters with eerie paranormal activity surfaced that included the spirits of indigenous people, Confederate soldiers, the tortured souls of men killed in industrial accidents, and most frightening of all, packs of child ghosts. Take a look at this photograph that is said to show the children hiding in the woods. One of the most chilling stories is about the ghost of a man hit by a train who is said to haunt the road. But after doing some research, it seems that the man may in fact be a woman, as in 1876, Della Hamilton McCullough was hit and killed by a passing train car on the tracks in Glencoe. She is the only person to have died there, so maybe her ghost is being mistaken for a male. It is definitely a female who screams at people from the doorway of the old houses along the trail, so maybe that is Della as well. Nowadays the trail is known as Zombie Road, after a man named Zombie, who allegedly escaped from a local mental hospital and disappeared into the woods, left behind nothing but blood-soaked clothes. Where he went is a mystery, but it's said he is one of the many spirits that haunt the area. At night, the path is closed to the public, possibly to protect them from the terrors that reside along it, and by day it is only passable by foot or bicycles. But don't be fooled by the picture-perfect tree-lined track. It is not all it seems, and is known as a notoriously unsettling and strange place. This is an account from a lady who had a particularly unsettling experience along Zombie Road.
We hear kind of this high-pitched squeal almost, sounding like it was from either a young girl or maybe a teenage girl, young woman, and simultaneously as we hear that sound, I feel this sharp pain on my leg.
Alex and her aunt hurry from the woods. When she gets home, a sinister surprise.
There was scratches on my leg.
Alex says she was wearing layers and riding chaps, all untorn. She assumes whatever scratched her wasn't of this world.
We'd love to know if any of you have travelled along it, and whether you encountered anything strange. If we are ever in the area, we'll be sure to check it out. What happened to Ohio kangaroos? This next one is not so much creepy, but more of a mystery. On Thursday the 11th of August 2022, the Brewster Police Department in Ohio got a call to say a strange animal was running loose around the town. At first the police thought nothing of it and did a quick search but found nothing. A couple of days later, 2 more witnesses came forward saying they had spotted a kangaroo. One of the witnesses recorded this footage.
Get your brakes on. Holy f***.
If this was in Australia, then no one would think anything of it, but in Ohio, America, there are no wild kangaroos. The animal was later identified as a wallaby, and some believe there was more than one. Police tried in vain to recapture the creature, but 7 days later, it was still on the run. Police had no idea where the wallaby came from, but thought it was likely an escaped pet. However, no one came forward to claim it. The wallaby continued to evade capture, and despite reports a private company was being sent in to catch it, there have never been any updates about the wallaby. So could it still be wandering around northern Ohio? We'd love to know what happened to it, and if anyone has any updates, we'd be interested to hear in the comments section below. Being from the UK, this reminds us of the big cat sightings that get reported throughout the United Kingdom. We even have our own personal encounter with a potential big cat that maybe we'll share soon. The terrifying story of the 1976 Chowchilla kidnapping. This next story seems so unbelievable that it could not possibly be true, but it is. On Thursday, July 15th, 1976, at around 4 p.m, Frank Ray was driving a school bus containing 26 students from Dairyland Elementary School. They had been on a school visit to Chowchilla Fairgrounds swimming pool. Ahead of him, Frank could see a van blocking the road. It didn't seem like it was going to move, so Frank got out of the bus to check what the problem was, and was confronted by 3 armed men with nylon stockings over their faces. One of the men held a gun to Frank's head and then proceeded to hijack the bus and its passengers. They drove the bus to Brenda Slough, a shallow branch of the Chowchilla River, where a second van was waiting. Frank and the children were bundled into the 2 vans, whose windows had been blacked out and their interiors reinforced. The hostages were then driven around for 11 hours before being taken to a quarry in Livermore. There they were told to climb down a ladder into a buried truck. Inside was a small amount of food and water and some mattresses. The men closed the makeshift hatch, covered it in earth, then drove off and left Frank and the children in their underground prison. The kidnappers then called Chowchilla Police Department to demand a $5 million ransom. However, the phone lines were busy, so the gang decided to sleep and try again later. However, they woke to the news that the children had escaped. Whilst entombed underground, Frank became convinced the metal hatch was about to collapse, so the group piled up the mattresses in an attempt to escape. Eventually, one of the students managed to wriggle through the soil covering the hatch and alerted a night watchman. The children and Mr. Ray were freed after their 16-hour ordeal. The kidnappers were quickly apprehended. The ringleader was Frederick Woods, whose father owned the quarry where the hostages were held. The other 2 were brothers Richard and James Schoenfeld. All 3 came from very privileged backgrounds and only concocted the bizarre scheme when they heard Ronald Reagan put out a press statement claiming that the state of California had $1 billion surplus and felt they could easily afford the ransom fee for safe return of the children. All the children were physically unharmed, but for many years suffered PTSD and other mental anguish due to trauma. The assailants were jailed for life, although they have all been released after spending most of their lives incarcerated. After Woods was released, he is reported to have said, "I didn't need the money, I wanted the money." As for Frank, well, he was hailed as a hero and was eventually gifted the yellow school bus he was driving that day. Pretty crazy story, right? The haunted Mr. Chu house. Lastly, we'll be taking a look at an extremely haunted house. In the heart of Delaware State in America stands a dilapidated mansion, almost taken over by nature. It's known as the Mr. Chu House, and the building has been the subject of a chilling legend for decades. In the late 1800s, the mansion belonged to a wealthy merchant called Samuel Chu. He was known for his elusiveness and eccentricities, and it was rumoured he had dealings with the occult. However, Chu's obsession with dark arts led him down a treacherous path, and it was speculated during one of his rituals he had unleashed malevolent spirits that had taken over his mind and his home. His once lavish mansion became a prison for his tormented soul. The locals were fascinated by what was going on in the house, but no one dared to go near it. Many years later, a teenager named Jack heard about the legend, and despite warnings to stay away, was determined to visit the house and tried to dispel the myths. On a moonlit night, Jack gathered up some friends, and armed with flashlights and bravado, they made their way to the mansion. As the house loomed before them, its once grand facade was now a crumbling shell. As they ventured inside, they felt an uneasy presence, and Jack felt a chill come over him. Wading through cobwebs and dust, the friends explored the dilapidated rooms in eerie silence, jumping at the shadows their flashlights were casting. As they journeyed deeper into the building, Jack felt an inexplicable pull towards a hidden room on the upper floor. He opened the creaking door, and it revealed a room filled with books, strange artifacts, and a dark, foreboding atmosphere. As he sifted through the contents, he came across Samuel Chu's journal. The pages were filled with terrifying accounts of the occult and cryptic symbols. It appeared the rumours were true, and Mr. Chu had indeed sold his soul to the devil, and had summoned malevolent spirits that now haunted the old mansion. Jack's friends urged him to leave and put the journal down, but Jack ignored their pleas. He was enthralled with its contents and wanted to know more. As he read on, he realized that Samuel Chu had sought immortality through a dark ritual, sacrificing the souls of innocent victims to sustain his own life, and he was now imprisoned in his mansion for eternity, a crazed soul with no escape. Suddenly, Jack could feel a chill in the air, and a haunting melody started to play. Jack's friends who were standing in the doorway turned around and saw a male apparition emerging from the shadows. It was the ghost of Samuel Chu. His eyes glowed as they fixated on the visitors to his home. A terrified Jack spoke to the figure, telling him he knew about the innocent victims he had sacrificed in search of eternal life. He urged Chu to find peace and release himself from the cycle of darkness and atonement he was in. He spoke of forgiveness and redemption. Jack's friends joined in urging Mr. Chu to seek forgiveness, and it seemed to work. Mr. Chu was being shown compassion and empathy from a living being, and this seemed to confuse the malevolent energy that was trapped in his soul. He gave out a huge gut-wrenching cry before disappearing into the darkness. The friends stood dumbfounded, but the evil presence they once felt had lifted, and the air seemed clearer, as if the heavy burden that once hung over it had gone. Jack and his friends left the mansion, believing they had released Samuel Chu from his torture. Or had they? Until the next group of brave souls venture up to the Chu house, we'll never know. How would you like to be working alone in your office late at night, like we often do? Perhaps you have a deadline and the boss is breathing down your neck for some outcomes. Or just imagine working late and realizing that something creepy was in the office with you and was going to turn your job into a nightmare. That's what happened to the woman in the next video. The CCTV footage was posted on the Facebook page of a paranormal team from Malaysia named Wujud. It begins with a chair starting to move on its own behind the woman. She probably senses that something is not quite right as she removes her headphones. Imagine her getting that creeping feeling up her spine that someone or something is in the room with her. Her breathing increases and her heart begins to race. Then her hair stands up on end as her muscles tighten and she gets goosebumps. As the adrenaline enters her bloodstream, her pupils dilate. Is the fear real, or is she just overreacting? Then a heavy glass water bottle is suddenly flung off the table and onto the floor, thrown by an unseen hand. The office worker is visibly shocked and covers her ears from the loud noise, staring in disbelief and astonishment at the bottle now rolling on the carpet. Is the fear real, or could there be some plausible explanation? Deciding to ignore the activity, the woman picks up the bottle and returns to her work at the computer. But then, in a final act, the chair that she is sitting on is violently yanked backwards. Sounds hard to believe, but take a look. Could this be a poltergeist escalating its activity, moving on to bigger things in an attempt to grab the worker's attention? Whatever the explanation, something has wielded a lot of force to move that chair in that way. Finally, giving in to the escape part of the flight or fight response. The woman quickly switches off her terminal, grabs her bag and leaves, probably for the best. What do you think of this footage? Hushabye baby. It's one thing for an adult to experience paranormal activity, but when the ghost decides to begin terrorizing an innocent baby, it's then that the experience becomes truly chilling. In 2022, Ashley Scott lived in Elizabethton, Tennessee, with her partner Chris Geisler and their 1-year-old baby boy Gavin. Ashley had experienced several mysterious events throughout her life. When she was a young girl, she shared a bedroom with her sister. One night, Ashley awoke to see a little boy standing beside her sister's bed. She admits that at the time she was scared, but later came to believe that the ghost boy was harmless. Ashley didn't experience any more otherworldly occurrences during her life until she moved into the apartment in Elizabethton. Over the 3 years of living in the apartment together, the couple have experienced too many odd things that they couldn't explain, but they just dealt with them because they were never any physical threat to anyone. The odd things included strange noises and the inexplicable movement of objects around the home. These are all typical poltergeist behavior. Not long before Ashley became pregnant, she and Chris heard the unmistakable sound of pots and pans crashing together. It was coming from the other side of the apartment, but when the couple went to look, nothing had been disturbed. Ashley, who was always unfazed by the idea that there was something else there, and always kind of accepted it, has now become fearful of what the entity will do next. She said, "I'm a stay-at-home mum and I'm always around Gavin, so he's always protected as much as I can protect him. But it scares me because you don't know what any other force might be able to do." It was while she was out grocery shopping on the 1st of October 2022 when Chris sent her a video that really freaked her out. The bizarre footage was caught on a household security camera and shows Chris sitting in the bedroom watching TV. 1-year-old Gavin begins to crawl into the room through the open door. Gavin is on all fours when he suddenly stops and stares in amazement at his father before he is violently jolted forward as though he has been pushed from behind. The baby, who almost falls flat on his face from the force of the movement, actually turns around to look at whatever it was that pushed him, although he can see that nothing is there. Take a look at this. Traditionally, poltergeists are described as troublesome spirits who haunt a particular person rather than a location. Could this spirit be the ghost of the little boy that Ashley saw when she was younger? Maybe he has followed her and now decided to harass and torment her by pushing Gavin because he is jealous of the baby. What do you think? The Lost Child. Midge Coon was driving along the Hume Highway in Bardia, a suburb of Sydney in New South Wales. It was a Sunday evening just before 8 p.m, as Mitch and his mother were travelling back to the Gold Coast along the dark highway. They were shocked to see the figure of a small child standing in the middle of the left lane of the busy 4-lane road. The child appeared to be dressed in blue clothes, possibly a large jacket or coat, or perhaps a blanket, and the figure appears to be lacking any real solidity as they stepped towards the vehicle. Mitch was unable to stop safely because he had been out racing bikes and he was towing a toy trailer, a type of RV that hauls equipment like snowmobiles and quad bikes. The hauler was huge and stopping suddenly would probably have caused an accident. But the mother and son were shocked and worried for the child's well-being, so Mitch's mum immediately rang 000 to report the shocking sighting and give their exact location. About 45 minutes later, at 8:29 p.m, Mitch made another phone call to the police. This time to Macquarie Fields police station, and offered to hand over his dashcam footage. But he was relieved to hear that a child had been collected safely and was on his way home, so the footage would not be needed. Mitch then posted the video of the frightening incident on social media, happy that the child was safe. But in a strange twist, Mitch later found out that the police who had attended and commenced a search of the area never found any child. The search was called off at 3:45 a.m. the following morning because there had been no reports of any missing person in the area. So what do you think? The child was not reported missing, so could it have been a kidnapped child who had escaped and was recaptured by their snatcher before the police got there? Or maybe the spirit of a child who had been killed on the road and now keeps returning to the area where the trauma took place? What do you think? The Poltergeist of Millwood. In another story from Australia, Norm Hurst, the owner of Brompton IGA store in Adelaide, had already been warned by the previous owners that the supermarket was haunted, but he brushed it off as nonsense. But that didn't stop him from being shocked when he saw actual evidence of paranormal activity recorded on the store's CCTV, and it would seem that the store's ghost has a sweet tooth. Footage can be seen of a packet of fruit roll-ups seemingly being thrown from a shelf before landing in the middle of an aisle. The product in question was kept 6 meters away from where it landed, at the other end of the next lane. And it doesn't just slide off the shelf either, it looks as though it had been pushed. The unexplained incident occurred at 11:30 p.m. after the store had closed and no one was on the premises. The CCTV cameras are motion activated and shut down automatically after 15 minutes of no movement. Footage from one camera shows the package suddenly appearing on the floor. The other two cameras show the fruit roll landing there, which would suggest that the motion sensors were triggered before the roll appeared. The burglar alarm was not activated and there was no sign of a break-in. Take a look.
The CCTV picks up and records. If nothing's movement for 15 minutes, it just instantly starts. So one of the cameras just shows the packet of roll-ups arriving on the ground. The other camera is already going, and we've had 3 cameras for some reason recording pretty much all night, staggered start, and 3 just going. Why are they going when it's security alarms on, we detect movement, detect glass shatter, yet they're running all night? And then you got one camera looking down the aisle, and for some reason the roll-ups have just flung out of the bottom shelf. It's not just slid off, it's been thrown out of the pasta, yet the roll-ups are kept 12 metres away.
Ghost hunters have been drawn to the supermarket to investigate, leading to a potential link being made with the murder of a boxer who was shot to death in front of the store in 1998. Could he be the ghostly culprit? Jessica Pulverenti, co-founder of Adelaide Paranormal Detectives, claimed that the footage appeared to be genuine, and said that there didn't seem to be any human interference, staging or wires involved. She also gave Norm some advice on how to deal with unwanted spirits, such as trying to find out who the ghost might be and what they might want. This could be achieved using electronic voice phenomena. Using prayers and cleansing rituals could also help the spirit to safely move on. Other places in Adelaide that are thought to be supernatural hotspots include Carclew Youth Arts Mansion, where the spectre of a woman who was thrown from the tower to her death makes regular visits, and Adelaide Arcade, which is host to the ghost of a former caretaker. But it's Adelaide Jail that holds the #1 spot for the most haunted place in the area. It is probably so packed with souls because of the 45 executions that were held there.
If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell